Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
You giving a what class? Vrindavaneswari.
Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Yeah,
Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to the Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. We're starting a new chapter today. So it's Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 6, which is entitled Purusha Shukta Confirmed. And so we'll start with text 1. And this morning we're very fortunate to have Her Grace Vrindavaneswari Mataji from ISKCON, Philadelphia, to give the class. Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. Please accept my obeisances. All glories to Prabhupada. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tila Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tila Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Astatari Sata His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Astatari Sata His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadara Shiva Sati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Girdhar Govardhan Ki Jai Mayapurdam Ki Jai Vrindavandam Ki Jai Jamuna Devi Ki Jai Ganga Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai ISKCON Harrisburg Ki Jai Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol All glories the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga Hare Hare Bol Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarane Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
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 Narayana Namaskritha Naram Chaiva Narottama Devam Sarasvatim Vyasyam Jatutaya Madhurayat Nastaprayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloki Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. So good morning, everyone. This morning we are second canto, the sixth chapter, verse 1. So I will repeat this 3 times, then we can repeat it together. Brahmo uvacha vacham vanar mukham kshetram chandasam sapta dattava Havya kavyamritam nanam jiva sarva rasaya cha brahmo vacha vacham vanar mukham chetram chandasam saptadav tava haya kavyamritam nanam jiva sarva rasya cha brahmo vacha vacham vanar mukham chetram chandasam saptada tadva havya kavyamritam nanam jiva sarva rasasya cha. Anyone else?
Brahmo Vacha, Vacham Vanamukam Chitram, Chandasam Sapta Datava, Havya Kavya Mitananam, Tiva Sarvara Sasya Cha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Would anyone else like to chant? Don't be shy. Give it a shot.
Brahmo Vacha, Vacham Vanermukam Kshetram, Chandasam Saptadatava, Havya Kavyamritananam, Jiva Sarva Rasasya Cha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. One more person. Let's get one more. One more person. Let's chant.
Please unmute and try. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Brahma uvacha vacham vanirmukham kshetram chandasam saptadhatava avyakavyamritananam jiva sarva rasasya cha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, we'll go word for word now. Brahma uvacha. Lord Brahma said, Vacham, of the voice, Vaneha, of fire, Mukam, the mouth, Kshetram, the generating center, Chandasham, of the Vedic hymns, such as Gayatri, Sapta, 7, Datavaha, skin and 6 other layers, Havya Kavya, offerings for the demigods and the forefathers, Amrita, food for human beings, Ananam, of all sorts of foodstuff, Jiva, the tongue, Sarva, all, Rasasya, of all delicacies, Cha, also. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Lord Brahma said, the mouth of the Virat Purusha, the universal form of the Lord, is the generating center of the voice, and the controlling deity is fire. His skin and 6 other layers are the generating centers of the Vedic hymns, and his tongue is the productive center of different foodstuffs and delicacies for offering to the demigods, the forefathers, and the general mass of people. Purport. The opulences of the universal form of the Lord are described herein. It is said that his mouth is the generating center of all kinds of voices, and its controlling deity is fire, demigod. And his skin and 6 other layers of bodily construction are the representative generating centers of the 7 kinds of Vedic hymns like Gayatri. Gayatri is the beginning of all Vedic mantras, and it is explained in the first volume of Srimad Bhagavatam. Since the generating centers of the different parts of the universal form of the Lord, and since the form of the Lord is transcendental to material creation, it is to be understood that the voice, the tongue, the skin, etc., suggest that the Lord in his transcendental form is not without them. The material voice, or the energy of taking in foodstuff, is generated originally from the Lord. Such actions are but perverted reflections of the original reservoirs. The transcendental situation is not without spiritual variegatedness. In the spiritual world, all the perverted forms of material variegatedness are fully represented in their original spiritual identity. The only difference is that material activities are contaminated by the 3 modes of material nature, whereas the potencies in the spiritual world are all pure because they are engaged in the unalloyed transcendental loving service of the Lord. In the spiritual world, the Lord is the sublime enjoyer of everything, and the living entities there are all engaged in his transcendental loving service without any contamination of the modes of material nature. The activities in the spiritual world are without any of the difficulties of the material world, but there is no question of impersonal voidness on the spiritual platform, as is suggested by the impersonalists. Devotional service is defined in the Narada Pancharatra as follows. Sarvapodi Vanir Muktam Tat Parat Vena Nirmalam Hrishikena Hrishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. Originally, since all the senses are produced of the Lord's reservoir of senses, the sensual activities of the material world are to be purified by the process of devotional service, and thus the perfection of life can be attained simply by purifying the present position of our material activities. And the purifying process begins from the stage of being liberated from the conception of different designations. Every living entity is engaged in some sort of service, either for the self or for the family or for the society, country, etc. But unfortunately, all such services are rendered due to material attachment. The attachments of the material affinity may be simply changed to the service of the Lord, and thus the treatment of being freed from material attachment begins automatically. The process of liberation is therefore easier through the devotional service than by any other methods. In the Bhagavad Gita 12.5, it is said that one is subjected to various kinds of tribulations if one is impersonally attached. Klesho di katras tesam avyaktas shaktya chestasam. Om Jnanatimaranjasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitamyena Tashme Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitamyena Bhutale Svayam Rupakada Mayam Dadadis Vadpatantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shiva Sati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Charaswamaniti Namane Snigta Chaita Supanada Vadmanam Jarasa Plutam Prabhupada Gata Prananam Bhakti Charapadam. So I'm going to read the translation again, and then we'll get into a little bit about this verse for today. Lord Brahma said, the mouth of the Virat Purusha, the universal form of the Lord, is the generating center of the voice, and the controlling deity is fire. His skin and 6 other layers are the generating centers of the Vedic hymns, and his tongue is the productive center of different foodstuffs and delicacies for offering to the demigods, the forefathers, and the general mass of people. So let's kind of dive first of all into the universal form a little bit, because there's a whole chapter on it in Bhagavad Gita. And this is just to kind of dial back for a moment to remind ourselves, this is a conversation between Brahma and his son Narada Muni. And so Brahma is giving Narada Muni all of the understanding of the spiritual energies of creation. And part of that is understanding the universal form of the Lord, the Virat Purusha. And in our tradition, and it's even said in Bhagavad Gita, the universal form is not something that we try to focus too much on in our understanding of the Lord and our understanding of spiritual life and bhakti, because the universal form is really kind of impersonal and beyond human conception anyway. So the purpose of really delving into the universal form is to give a deeper understanding of all that is. It's really to give us an understanding of Krishna in his two-armed form, Krishna in his four-armed form, the Krishna in the two-armed form that we worship and that we revere in the pastimes in Vrindavan and Kurukshetra. These different pastimes are the personal forms of the Lord, and this is this personal relationship through that bhakti yoga that we focus on in our path. However, without fully understanding Krishna's origin, his identity as the universal form, it's maybe might be more difficult for us to see Krishna in the two-armed form as God. And this is where even in some of the stories and the pastimes that we know, Krishna was accused of eating dirt, and the boys, the other gopas were saying, "Oh, Krishna ate dirt, Krishna ate dirt." And Mother Yashoda was like, "Oh, no, no, no." And she opens his mouth, take the dirt out. And it's like she sees the universal form as completely bewildered by the situation. Why does that happen? Why are we shown that in the Bhagavatam? It's to help us to help remind us that this is no ordinary child. It's to help remind us that Krishna is no ordinary person. He is, in fact, the Supreme Personality. And he is, in fact, this Krishna in the two-armed form is really the personal form for us, but he is also the encompassing Virat Purusha. So the Virat Purusha is looked at as in essence an expansion of the Lord, in the sense that even though the Virat Purusha energies are all pervading, they are the controller of everything, but Krishna in his form is really in the personal form. So it can get a little bit confusing, and it's a very complex topic then when we start getting into this. I'm going to say esoteric, but it's I say esoteric simply for the purpose of helping us understand that a lot of this is beyond what we can conceive, certainly beyond what we can see. We know that, right? None of us are seeing Krishna in this form. We're not seeing the universal form in our daily lives. So this is beyond our conception, beyond our perception. And so it does become a little bit esoteric in the study and understanding of it, because we are reading it simply through this parampara. We're reading it through the Shastra, and having that faith that in this faith in this understanding of this form. So we're here, we're talking about this form. Lord Brahma is teaching this to Narada Muni, and Narada Muni, because it's an important concept within the devotional life, within bhakti. And we know that Narada Muni is a great sage, but he is also a progenitor of bhakti yoga. So because of his role in spreading bhakti yoga all over the creation, Brahma is giving this information, this understanding to Narada Muni, also because we can, without the relationship of the personal relationship, we cannot understand that true relationship unless we understand the whole. It's like looking at the part without understanding what that part comes from. So, and the Krishna in the two-armed form is really the source of everything, and the universal form is an expansion beyond that. So, like I said, it's a very technical topic, and we understand that the different body, we'll say the aspects of the body of the Virat Purusha, of the universal form, have these different qualities. And this particular verse is talking about the mouth and being the center of voice, the center of mantras and hymns, which we can then say into the human form. We all have mouths, we have voices, we can chant, we can speak prajalpa, we can speak kata, or we can speak prajalpa. So these are our choices here. And the concept of being here in the material energies as a perverted form of the spiritual sky is very important to understand, because in our understanding, in the Vedic understanding, which in my feeling is very complete, the Vedic understanding of the Lord is really all there is. So if the Lord has a mouth and we have a mouth? So if we have a mouth, then the Lord must have a mouth. If we have hands, the Lord must have hands. So anything that we have here, the Lord has to have, because it wouldn't exist otherwise. And because the Lord is the ultimate creator of everything. So, but the perversion comes, and Prabhupada talks about this in this verse, is that we are bound by the modes of material nature. And that is a really very important concept to remember. So let's go back to the universal form for a minute here. As I mentioned, Bhagavad Gita has an entire chapter dedicated. Chapter 11 is dedicated to understanding of the universal form. And Arjuna is asking to see the universal form. However, Krishna has to grant him the vision, the divya chakshu, the vision, the spiritual eyes, in order to see the universal form. So Arjuna has been receiving instruction, and we know through the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna has been receiving all of this instruction about karma yoga and bhakti yoga, dhyana yoga. He's received by this point, Arjuna has received all of this instruction, and he's now feeling more confident. He's understanding the subject better. And in the first text of the 11th chapter, Arjuna says, by my hearing the instructions you've kindly given me about these most confidential spiritual subjects, my illusion has now been dispelled. What was Arjuna's illusion? His illusion was that he was this body. His illusion was that he was this family. Therefore, this illusion disturbed his mind deeply in the war in Kurukshetra, because he felt that he could not carry out the orders and carry out his duty as a kshatriya, which is a warrior, fighting on the behalf of the Pandavas. So he was deeply disturbed. He was in illusion about his role. He wanted to go off and become, a Brahmin and cast aside his bow and no longer fight. But this was not his position. He's kshatriya, he's a warrior. This is not his position. And Krishna has helped him understand that you, as your role as a warrior, and also understanding that as his role as a servant of the Lord, as his role in this material energies, because Krishna is lords over everything, that it's Arjuna's duty to just carry out what he's been designated to do here. Krishna will handle the results of everything. So now Arjuna is thinking, okay, I finally I'm understanding. My illusion has been dispelled, but I want to see a little bit more of you. I know that you're the Lord, but I ask you to show me. I ask you to show me this universal form. So we see in this conversation with Arjuna, this conversation regarding Krishna's universal form comes up. In the conversation between Brahma and Narada Muni, the universal form is coming up. Why? Why is this coming up? Again, it's going back to, for us to understand the relationship with the personal form of the Lord, we need to understand the totality of the Lord. We may not be able to fully grasp it with our material minds, but we at least need to have a sense of Krishna's opulences, of his unlimitedness, let's say. And so when Arjuna is given this spiritual vision, then he is now seeing everything. He's seeing all of the different energies of the Lord. He's seeing all of the destruction and devastation. He's seen everything happening. He's seen the different demigods. He's seen all of these magnificent but also terrifying things. This universal form is really the past, it's the future, it's all of the merging of the both. It's, and Krishna says, the moving, it's the non-moving, everything is completely there. And Krishna says to Arjuna, whatever you wish to see, behold at once in this body of mine. In this body of mine. So we are to understand, and here, this ties directly back to the verse that we read for today, the body, the mouth. We're talking about the head or the mouth of the universal form. Krishna is in Bhagavad Gita, in the teachings to Arjuna, referring to the universal form as his body. But it's the all-pervading body. So in the impersonalist or the voidist perspective of God, there's the form of the Lord is not observed. It's not the form, all of the universal energies are not observed as being in a form, in a body. But we now see Krishna is saying, no, behold this in this body of mine. And so we want to be careful to distinguish that the universe has bodily distinctions. And we're learning about that through Brahma to Narada Muni in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the different aspects of the body. The next verse, to give a little preview for next week, It's talking about his nostrils, then his eyes, his bodily surface, his skin, the hairs on his body, his arms, his legs, his trunk, the genitals, everything is there. It's talking about his entire body. Now we can look at this and look at our own bodies and say, okay, well, that's everything that I have. So that's odd. God has all the same, seeming qualities as me. But yet we are in the minutest of energies. So we have similar qualities, but we don't have similar quantities of those qualities. So we are not as, the qualities are mirroring that, but the quantities are such that the Lord, especially in his universal form, is beyond conception of limitlessness. But we know when we look at our own body, like, okay, this is my hand, it's right here, right? I know that my face, my nose, my mouth all have limitations. And those limitations come from what? They're coming from the material energies. And so this is where we start to get a better understanding that if it's here on earth, if it's here in the material world, it must be in the spiritual sky too, in the spiritual world. It could not, if it's here, then it must be there, but it's in a perverted form. It's not in the pure form of it. So this is an understanding that's really important to grasp onto, that if it's conceived of, if someone conceived of an idea, right? You see crazy things in movies, sci-fi movies have these outlandish things. If someone conceived of it, then it must be already existing somewhere, because we are not creators in this material energies. We are creators in the sense that we feel like we have creative energies, but the Lord is the true creator. So then it must also exist in the spiritual sky, but we are just a reflection. Now, there's a couple of things when I was really meditating on this concept of the perverted reflection. It drew me to the oops, I think I froze for a minute there. Okay. It drew me to the chapter of the banyan tree. And the banyan tree is really, it's in chapter 15. Chapter 15 has a really beautiful discussion of the banyan tree. And the banyan trees, the roots are growing down, but it's reverse growing up as well, the tree, and then the reflection is in the water. The branches of the tree extend downward and upward. So the branches and the roots. The banyan tree is a representation of the entanglements of the material energies, but also the reflection and how the material energies can be a perverted reflection of that what's in the spiritual sky. So when we are able to understand the material energies as truly a perversion of the spiritual energies, when we are able to understand that we are still guided and governed by the modes of material nature, and that the only way to come to the spiritual sky, to come to the spiritual world, is by detaching from all of those things, then we can truly be free. But it takes time. And in chapter 15, verse 5, it says, "Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are free from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom." And so this is really this step. So we in Prabhupada said today that the process of liberation is easier through devotional service, and that the attachments of material affinity may simply be changed to the service of the Lord, and thus the treatment of being freed from material attachments begins automatically. And so we are getting this understanding of the universal form in order for us to see how we are in these material energies as well. So it provides that contrast so that we can also see here in this material energies, oh, wait, I have these attachments. Wait, my activities are not pure. Hold on, wait, I think that I need to focus more on, on my spiritual life. And Prabhupada gave a verse here in this purport from the Narada Pancharatra that is actually a well-known verse. Sarvapadi Vinir Muktam Tat Paratvena Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. And that is focusing on the purport is focusing on the fact that the senses, if when we start to withdraw our senses, when we start to focus on the seva, when we start to focus on service, devotional service to the Lord, and our senses and our activities are focused on the Lord, then we will start to become purified. And that's when we can really start to attain that perfection in life. But until then, as long as we are continuing to engage in the activities of material energies by attachment, not by duty, then we are going to continually repeat that cycle of birth and death. And when I say engage in material energies by attachment, not duty, what I'm referring to is that we are always going to be engaging the material energies as long as we're in a material body. So it was until we take our final breath and our spirit moves to either the next body or someplace else to a spiritual planet, hopefully, or to back home to Godhead, hopefully. Until we take our last breath, we're still engaging with these material energies. And we have to do that by duty. We can't escape that. However, if we are still attached in our dealings in the material world, this is where it can become a little bit slippery. So it's the attachment in these material energies that keeps us in this repeated cycle of birth and death. And so I guess the one thing we might want to consider is, how do we know? How do we know the difference between being attached in the material energies or acting in material energies as a matter of duty? That's a tough one, isn't it? Because if we're here, we're in material bodies, and we know we don't have a choice, right? We're here in the material bodies until our last breath. How do we know how we're engaging in the material energies? So there's a couple of things, there's sadhu shastra, and through a pure devotee, through shastra, we might have understanding and be able to reflect inwardly to say, okay, I think that I'm still engaging with material energies from the space of attachment most of the time. I think I'm pretty attached to this material activity or that material activity. Now, the other way to have an understanding of where we are at in that process of detaching from the material energies is by our mood and how we handle things. Because if we are acting as a matter of duty and we are seeing Krishna as the supreme controller and doer of everything, and we are ultimately surrendered to Krishna, then activities that are happening in these material energies won't disturb us quite as much. We certainly, if someone leaves our body, we feel natural grief, and that's normal. That's a normal human response. What I'm talking about is that if something doesn't go our way, we're not kicking and screaming, throwing a temper tantrum, trying to get revenge, getting very angry. And so these are ways to try and better understand where we are at. And as I read from regarding the banyan tree, those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, that's there, false prestige. False prestige is basically understanding or thinking that we are the ones in charge of everything. If I think that my activities in my day-to-day life are going to result in outcomes because I did them and because I am the one controlling that situation, then we are eliminating a huge factor, which is the Krishna factor. We're blinding ourselves to the fact that Krishna gave us these abilities. I am the ability of man. Krishna is also is super soul, guiding our activities, seated in a vehicle in our hearts, right? He's also in the hearts of others. He's also in the energies around us, the spirit, So if we think that I'm so successful because I'm so smart and I have lots of degrees and I am this and that, and I'm making lots of money because of this, and this, then we're forgetting karmic reaction. We're forgetting Krishna could take that all away in a heartbeat, right? So we have to remember that anytime we're feeling a little bit proud, it's not to say that we can't feel good about accomplishments, right? We have to keep a sense of our ego to some degree to survive in these material energies, but we can't become so puffed up and inflated thinking that we are the doer of all, or else it will completely take us in the wrong direction. It will take us further and further away from Krishna. And ultimately, while we may have experienced some happiness or satisfaction in that success or whatever that endeavor is, the suffering is bound to come. It's bound to happen because that's just the modes of material nature. Things are temporary here. It's not to say we can't experience happiness here, but if we're experiencing happiness based on material gains, material wins, material energies, and we're experiencing that happiness because of those things, they're bound to go away because that happiness is temporary. When have you ever met someone that was just happy all the time, content all the time? Unless they're like a deep spiritualist and they truly embody and they embrace surrender. Then they're just at peace. And they're not like, riding some emotional roller coaster. They're just feeling at peace. And we see a lot fewer peaks and valleys and those types of people. When we do truly come across a true sadhu, they're pretty even keeled. They're very they're not going to get pulled into elation. They're not going to get pulled into depression so easily. They're riding those things, the equipoise in happiness and distress. The Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, goes right into that point. One who is equiposed in happiness and distress. That is a sadhu. That is someone who has truly embraced and is living living that surrender because they have given everything to the Lord. So whatever the Lord provides, they're content with, no matter what that is. If the Lord provides wealth, great. That's fine. They're not worried that it's going to go away someday because the Lord put it there. If the Lord feels it needs to go away, it will go away. If the Lord provides poverty, that's fine too, because they trust that the Lord has provided that for them. There must be a reason, therefore, and so be it. And they will live in that space of poverty. And so as we delve into this topic of the universal form, what we're really doing is we're understanding the perfection. We're understanding the perfection of the spiritual energies. We are understanding the vastness and unlimitedness of the spiritual energies, and also understanding in contrast that while the Lord has all of these qualities in totality and unlimited levels of such, that we here in the material energies do not. And that we here in the material energies we should not be trying to possess all of those because we are in the material body. What we should do is serve the material, serve those, not material, serve the spiritual energies, serve the Lord. And that is the true freedom that we can obtain through this knowledge. The knowledge is providing us with the freedom from material sufferings by really seeing the greatness of Krishna in all of his aspects. So we think about the form of Krishna in his two-armed form because that is the worshipable form. That is what has been brought to us through Shastra, through the Parampara, that the two-armed form of Krishna is the worshipable form. Why? Because it is the form that we can most relate to, which gives us that relationship. Krishna in this form has pastimes. Krishna in this form has features that we can relate to. It's worshipable. And so like I said in the beginning, but to understand the two-armed form, we have to understand all of the aspects of the Lord, at least to the best of our ability, to truly see that Krishna in this two-armed form, that's not the whole story. That's for our benefit. That's for our benefit to have that relationship. And so, and so I'm going to read with just one quote from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, and then we can go into see if there's any questions or feedback. A pure devotee does not like to see Krishna in any form except his form with two hands. A devotee must see his universal form by his grace, not with the mind, but with spiritual eyes. To see the universal form of Krishna, Arjuna is told not to change his mind, but his vision. The universal form of Krishna is not very important. That will be clear in the verses. Yet because Arjuna wanted to see it, the Lord gives him the particular vision required to see that universal forms. Devotees who are correctly situated in a transcendental relationship with Krishna are attracted by loving features, not by a godless display of opulences. The playmates of the friends of Krishna and the parents of Krishna never want Krishna to show his opulences. They are so immersed in pure love that they do not even know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the loving exchange, they forget that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that the boys who play with Krishna are highly pious souls. After many, many births, they are able to play with Krishna. Such boys do not know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They take him as a personal friend. The Supreme Person is considered the impersonal Brahman by the great sages, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the devotees, and as a product of this material nature by ordinary men. The fact is that the devotee is not concerned to see the Virat Rupa, the universal form, but Arjuna wanted to see it to substantiate Krishna's statement so that in the future people could understand that Krishna is not only theoretically or philosophically presented himself as the Supreme, but actually presented himself as such to Arjuna. Arjuna must confirm this because Arjuna is the beginning of the Parampara system, and those who are actually interested to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna and who follow in the footsteps of Arjuna should understand that Krishna not only theoretically presented himself as the Supreme, but actually revealed himself as the Supreme. So I'm going to see if there's any questions. I know we're getting a little bit close to the hour here. So thank you so much for your time, and please forgive any mistakes or missteps along the way. And I welcome any feedback or comments or questions.
Thank you very much, Mataji, for a very nice lecture about the universal form and going to chapter 11 of Bhagavad Gita and explaining even more, connecting Arjuna to it. And he did, in fact, ask to see the universal form, as Sri Prabhupada says, and tells devotees, if anybody says that I am God, kindly ask him to show his universal form. Only God can do that. And if he cannot, or he gives you any excuse, you know that person is not being honest. So dear devotees, this is the time that you can unmute yourself and ask any questions. share some realization, connect the dots of what you heard to what you already know, and so we can have some conversation. Krishna Kata, Hare Krishna. So, any
Hare
question?
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Vrindavaneswari, please accept my humble obeisance to Soga Shishra Prabhupada.
Please accept mine.
XJ, thank you for this wonderful class and bringing it down to ground level, as I call it. You know, very, very, very simple. Thank you so much. I wanted to share my takeaway actually is, you know, when you were speaking about you know, it will speak, you know, the upcoming verses, you know, and it goes into the depth of the Lord's skin and the, you know, and the body parts and this and that, right? And then sometimes the mind will say, well, it's the same as what I got, right? But then it goes back to a verse that was coming to my mind as one of the verses, I forgot which verse, but in three is a Upanishad, you know, where it says that the Lord can use his body parts for anything that we cannot. You know, that famous, you know, like the Lord can, you know, use his feet to eat if he wants to.
Yeah.
Can't do that. So, you know, so even though the mind may trip and say, well, the same body parts that I do, that I have, but I can't do what the Lord can do, you know, because he's the complete absolute truth. Complete absolute truth. So I was really appreciating the reminder how you know, that the Lord may look like us, but the Lord is supreme. And, you know, he's a supreme pure, which we are not.
Right.
You know, which
Exactly.
we are not. Yeah, he's a supreme pure, you know, and we are not. So I was really appreciating how it's important that as devotees, practicing devotees, we find ways to develop a deeper relationship with the Lord in his two-arm form, because it's so personal. And that's what you see in Goloka Vrindavan anyway. It's a, you know, you know, his two-arm form, you know, because that's so personal. That is so personal. So, but yeah, thank you for the reminder to remind us how important it is that each one of us develop this personal relationship with the Lord to go deeper and deeper in our spiritual life. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for that comment. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I think you know, I think as we think about the different perspectives on the universal form, the universal aspect of the Lord, and the Mayavadi or, you know, the impersonalist perspective, and a personalist that might read read this chapter and think, no, it's just energies, you know. But this is very much flying in the face of that concept. It's very much saying Krishna, even in his universal form, has a head, has a mouth, has, you know, teeth, has, you know, nose, and so it really helps us to gain a better understanding that Krishna in all forms has form. Is not formless. So I think that's a really important thing to understand, and something that we can, when we do speak with someone that's more in that thinking about just the energies and things like that, that we can help them understand through this verse and through chapter 11 as well, that that's not exactly accurate according to our understanding. So any other thoughts? Thank you.
So anybody else? I was actually looking at the translation, and there was a part of it that kind of supports what Ansia was saying earlier about the body parts of the Lord, in the senses being used for other, you know, activities as he likes, but ours is very restricted to one sense. That's one thing, with the exception of the tongue that can taste and also speak, part of it. So the text itself talked about let me try to see if I put it up. Okay. The Lord Brahma said the mouth of the Virat Purusha is the generating center of the voice, and the controlling deity is fire. Then he said his skin and 6 other layers are the generating centers of the Vedic hymns, and his tongue is the productive center of the different foodstuffs and delicacies. So at first, my mind was tripping to this, but the skin is the generating center of the Vedic hymns.
Vedic hymns, yeah.
Okay, then
So,
when it comes to singing the Vedic hymns, wouldn't the tongue do that though? Then I realized, okay, I say here, I'm talking about this limited body of mine, comparing that, and that can, that's when I realized, yeah, Krishna can do anything with any part of his body. That
just
was
like
one example there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that's the why I was saying, like, this is hard for us to conceive of, and it seems very esoteric because our material minds can't quite wrap around it. So to understand it as it is the best way, because if we start really trying to like pick it apart, it's just going to be more bewildering, I think, at the end of the day. It's not meant to be deeply understood because it's not for our conception. It's for us to know and kind of get a general sense of, but I don't think it's meant for us to really deeply connect with and understand, because it's too elevated. The content and the topic is so beyond our conception of anything, that we have to just take it at face value.
Yeah. Actually, when I was thinking about it, sometimes I get a little help, from Guru, because I'm always praying to Guru. And so the way in which this was defeated in my old mind was that, well, his skin and 6 other layers are the generating center of the Vedic hymns. But the Vedic hymns are there. It does not say the Vedic hymns have to be sung. This is the production of the hymns. You can look at lyrics of a song. It doesn't mean you're singing it, right? So that's how my mind is, oh yeah, all right. So then I can accept it in that sense. Again, but what you said is important. Don't try to pick it apart, because the universal form. First of all, we're told what it is really, and then we're also advised to relate in devotional service to the instructions of Guru, to the two-handed form of Krishna. It's easy to kind of see that. Yeah. So my mind is going to different places, but
it's hard not to.
Happens,
I mean,
yeah.
It's hard not to. And I think if you think about the skin as an organ, the skin is an organ, and it can breathe and sweat and do all of these things. So it has production centers. So if we think of it as in that sense of the skin being an organ and having production centers of sweat and, the breathability of the skin, sure, why not? Sweat is produced. Sweat is a product of the skin. So, through the pores of the skin can come the manifestations of all kinds of things.
Yeah. And that's we can't compare ourselves. We just basically take it as it is, because if we're going to talk about the pores of the skin, well, the Lord's pores, the universe has come from that. What about that? Can we do that?
Or the navel, right?
So,
so it's
the Lord
beyond what we can ever.
Yeah. We accept this is instructions and authority. This is how we take it. Coming down the Parampara. Because we can't conceive of much at all. See, Prabhupada calls it, we have a teeny brain. It's like a tiny brain. So that's the way it is. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the discussion. Any other, we're coming close to the top of the hour.
Yeah.
Any final comments or questions? If not,
I wanted to add, from both your discussion, I think sometimes, at least, what to my limited knowledge is, sometimes when we start to analyze and overanalyze the supremacy of the Lord, right? Like singing hymns from the skin, like, my God, this is like unheard of, right? But I think what happens is, at least for me, it's, it is safer and better to accept that is a supreme pure, and that's who he is. And it's so much more easier to accept it because he's so supreme. Because I think when when one starts to get into the analytical part and start, dissecting and all that, we can start making offenses and minimize the supremacy of the Lord. And think it's a fairy tale or something, you know? So I think for me, at least, it's definitely so much more safer and better to accept it as it is, as Worship Prabhupada says, and know that the Lord can do anything, and that's why he's the Lord. He's supreme, and we are not. But yeah, I just wanted to share that thought because sometimes the mind can really trip.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it's like I said, we take it for what it is, and move on. You know, it's as soon as we start applying our own material comparisons to it, we're bringing it down many levels, and we don't want to do that. So it's hard not to. The material brain wants to take us on a journey. So
Yeah, it's actually been said, the universal form. We've also been told in the Shastra that those who don't relate to the two-handed form of the Lord, or even the four-handed form of the Lord, are personally accepting, or they accept the universal form, which is actually imaginary. That has also been said that is imaginary. So again, things have been put in the proper perspective in other parts of the scriptures. So that's all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Any final questions? If not, then thank you very much, Vrindavaneswari Matthew. Every time you come on, you spark so much discussion. And it clears things. My own mind and the mind of the devotees who are listening also. So we are all learning as we go. Hare Krishna.
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, wonderful. So have a nice Krishna conscious weekend for everyone.
Apachurubhischa, Kripasindhupayabhicha, Patitanam, Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha.
Namo Namaha. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Hare Krishna, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Hare Krishna. Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.